It's crazy, honestly, what happens at sleep. Like your natural killer T cells that fight cancer are all made in your sleep, right? And so you look at lack of sleep and, higher incident rates of cancer, and you're like, okay, well, that makes a ton of sense, right?
Hey everyone, Dr. Axe here. Welcome to the show. This week I have a fantastic guest on. It is Harpreet Rai, and he is the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Oura. And by the way, you can see right now, if you're watching on video on YouTube, I've got my Oura ring on right now. And this is my favorite piece of technology when it comes to boosting your health. So we're going to talk about tech and how it can boost your health today and a whole lot more, but also a little bit more about Harpreet. He was the portfolio manager for many tech companies and actually helped with Eminence Capital for 9 years and began his career working at Morgan Stanley. But today he is helping lead Oura Ring company, and they're seeing just tremendous success. But the thing I want to talk about today is how it can boost and benefit your health. Harpreet, welcome to the show.
Dr. Axe, thanks for having me. Really awesome to be here. So appreciate it.
Well, cool. Well, I got turned on to this through a good friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours, Chris Bennett. And Chris is just an amazing guy. And he was telling me about this a few years ago. He said, man, I have this piece of technology that I've been using, and it's helped my sleep tremendously. And I'm always into finding ways to improve my health, of course, and share that with the audience. And so I said, hey, what is it? He said, it's this, amazing thing called Oura Ring. And by the way, if you're listening, you may have seen this before. You may have seen the video ads on YouTube or seen your friends working. In fact, NBA players and professional athletes now are wearing this to get an edge. But that being said, I started using this ring, and I want to say I got one, and then my wife is like, I have to have one. And so she started using it. We recommend it to like a load of our friends because, sleep is such a huge deal and recovery. And so we started using this, and I'll tell you what, like being able to tell how much REM sleep you get at night, how much deep sleep, being able to see what your heart rate was while you sleep, and all of these different factors was so important. But one of the first questions I have for you is, why was Oura founded, and what is the mission behind it? Because I always love to hear the heart and soul behind, the mission that you and your team are on.
Yeah, look, Oura was founded simply to empower people to own and understand their health. I think we refer a lot to that as potential. If you're healthier, right, you're going to be able to be a better executive, be a better leader. You're going to be able to be, a better wife, better husband, right? You're going to be able to be a better, caretaker for your children, and frankly, more productive. And so I think for us, better health does that. And we started with sleep. I think sleep is one of the, overlooked areas of health. I think it's obviously we've seen lots of growth and great work, obviously by you and others, and diet, activity, nutrition, mental health, but finally now getting to sleep. And frankly, we also looked at most of us in the US now get less than 6 hours on any given night, and the hormonal effects that has, right? Long-term, short-term, even just how you feel grumpy the next day, I think, and just stress and anxiety as well. So I think for us, it was, hey, focusing on health, starting with sleep, perhaps because we think it's the most important and overlooked area of health right now.
Yeah, talk to me about sleep for a minute, because by the way, I completely agree with you. Sleep, and when I look at the studies myself, when you look at if a person gets less than 7 hours of sleep a night, their chance of getting sick with a cold or flu nearly triples. The risk of actually chronic illnesses like cancer and heart disease skyrocket. So, but talk to me about, did you guys look at the research, or what caused you and your team to say, we need to go after sleep first?
Yeah, well, I think it was a combination of the research and probably three things. Research, most people weren't paying attention to it, and it was getting worse as a society, right? So I think, unfortunately, with all the always on, connected to, the internet, the interwebs, right? There comes at a cost, right? I think, you're constantly getting bombarded. You have also the ability to, connect with anyone in the world at any time. You can, watch Netflix, you can do whatever, all these awesome things by technology, but they're changing the way we behave as humans and as society. And so when you look at the research too, it's sort of like, we used to get 100 years ago, close to 9 hours of sleep. right. And now, it's been accelerating, unfortunately, and getting worse. It's, sub 7 and on any given night, less than 6 hours for half the population. So when you look at that, combine it with the research and sort of look at where we are strong at and where this technology, wearable technology, is strong at and most accurate, it's perhaps sleep and recovery. Not to say that it can't be helpful in activity. It can, and we do stuff like we track steps and all these other things, right, near caloric burn. But sleep is just such an underserved area that has such huge importance, and unfortunately is becoming a bigger problem.
It really is. I think all of the light, right, the light. I mean, scrolling on our cell phones, TV screens are bigger than they've ever been. Computer screen. I mean, all of these things are adding up together. So I'm absolutely with you. I do think, and then even now, rather than doing calls, we're doing Zooms, right? Yeah. So, I mean, the blue light is really adding up in our system. And that's why this piece of technology is so powerful. And the other thing I want to say, and maybe you can speak to this for a minute. One of the things I've been so blown away with is the Oura Ring, how accurate it is, because I've worn the watches and the bracelets and some of the other pieces of technology. This really seems to me to be more accurate than anything else I've used.
Yeah. Look, I think we prided, the reason it's a ring, it's easy to, first of all, it's easy to use, right? Like to your point, no one wants to wear a watch to bed, let alone something on their head, right? Like those old, even polysomnography, like sort of at home machines. The Zio was an early one, and it's sort of a pain, especially if you have like long hair like me. I would say the accuracy though is why we chose a ring form factor. So, human anatomy, if I tell you take your pulse, you take it on an artery inside the neck, inside the wrist, right? Femoral artery, obviously in your leg. But if you just look at the wrist for a second, there's arteries on the inside of your wrist here, right? If you flip your palm, look at your palm for a second, that's where you take your pulse. Those arteries go to, the palm of your hand. And it turns out on the palm of your hand, your skin is really thin, right? And you have these rich arteries with a lot of blood flow. And then if you look at the backside of the wrist where your watch sits, right, you got hair like me, dark skin, more muscle tissue, there are veins. You can't feel your pulse there. And as a result, the pulse signal on the finger, where we are measuring your heart rate variability, actually using, LED technology to do that, like most wearables do, that pulse signal is 100 times stronger on your finger than your wrist. And that's why every hospital.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think we looked at that and we're like, holy cow, if you want to measure your heart rate variability, compared to, let's say, an EKG, and we published research on this, 99% correlates in EKG overnight for heart rate, 98% for heart rate variability. If you want that continuous data, doing it on the finger is a place that's easy to use and that's accurate. And so I think that's really why we focused on this form factor and accuracy. Luckily, I think that's led us in a good direction as a company.
Yeah, completely agree. One of the things I love that you guys do on your, on the app for Oura is really also going through recommendations. Can you give us a few recommendations that you've used over the years or that you've recommended as a company to help promote better sleep? Totally.
So blue light, I think, is perhaps one of the easier ones that consumers can take action with. People can take action with today, right? Even just starting to use blue light blockers. If you are going to watch TV later in the evening, after the sun goes down, like most of us probably do, or right now still working from home, keep working. It's more like sleeping at work than working from home right now, I think, is how most of America feels, and others globally. So I think blue light is an easy one, right? Like, and frankly, natural light. Get that circadian rhythm back, right? Get exposure to sunlight during the day, right? Get out there. That helps so much with regulating everything, including the onset of melatonin. I think the other big one, frankly, is what you eat and when you eat. Eating super close to bedtime and eating a large meal. We see people start to do intermittent fasting, but move their windows up earlier, or frankly, just eat dinner earlier, even if they're not doing intermittent fasting. That has a huge impact. I think coffee and alcohol are probably two of the bigger ones. Like, you start to realize, most people don't really think about it when they have coffee. I'm feeling a little tired. I'll have that cup at 2 or 3 p.m. And you shouldn't, or even 5 p.m. Turns out your heart rate's jacked. You can't fall asleep, right? You're sort of been wired now. The half-life of caffeine, obviously, over 12 hours. So that has a huge impact, on the quality of your sleep. Those are probably some of the top ones. And then, even working late, even if you're using blue light blockers, we do see that just that added stress of being on all the time as we are as consumers can really, really hurt. So I think those are some of the big ones, but there's obviously a lot more fun when you're doing it, seeing the actions for yourself. I think that's the thing that's so empowering, is you get a constant feedback every single day you open the app. You get constant messages and insights, as you said, as well in the app every day.
Yeah, one of the first things I do when I wake up in the morning is I look at my sleep score. So you have a readiness score and a sleep score. So you see, like this morning I woke up and it said, hey, you're at 86, you're optimal, make a move. It says it looks like you're balanced and you're ready for more activity levels today. So it goes through that, gives me my sleep score, which my deep sleep was really good. My REM wasn't as good, but my deep was really good last night.
What was your deep last night?
My deep was 3 hours.
Man, I thought like, so I have a ready, actually, when we start meetings, we start asking each other readiness scores, sleep scores and activity scores. So I'm 90 readiness today, 85 sleep. But I was like, oh, I got 2.5 hours deep last night. But man, 3, that's awesome.
So one of the things I noticed for myself is my deep is always really good. My REM, that's the REM is my biggest weakness on this app. But a few things I've noticed, and my biggest one was this. I was so surprised that, because now my body type is I lose weight easy. Like I have to constantly, for me not to look like a twig, like I have to lift weights. I've got to eat a pretty significant amount of food because my body just and some people have the opposite problem, obviously, but I have the problem I have. So with that is I was eating a really still big meal at night. And I noticed that, again, it said this to me one morning. It said, it told this through my heart rate, the Oura did, it said, you should consider eating a smaller meal before bed, or a smaller meal rather than you're eating too much before you go to bed at night. And I thought, okay. And I tried it. And literally that has probably been the biggest thing that's made a difference, along with not looking at the blue light. Now, I already was following my own recommendations here where I wore the blue blockers. But the thing is, blue blockers to me just weren't enough. Yeah. If I was still watching something an hour before bed. So what I started doing is, if we're going to watch something, we watch it right after dinner. That hour before bed, I'll read or listen to a book on audio. And then I try and make if I'm going to eat bigger meals, they're breakfast, lunch, and then I eat a smaller dinner. Exactly what you just said. I could not believe the difference it made in my sleep and how restful I was. But all of these tips and recommendations you're getting through the Oura app, and it's amazing how intuitive it is in telling you things you can do to improve your health. It's incredible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, there's things that we see in the data, right? So for example, if you're wearing the ring, we know you weren't, let's say, active later in the day, you're not moving around a lot. And then we see your heart rate's elevated, pretty throughout most of the night, meaning it, hormonally speaking, right? If you think about sort of sleep and the circadian rhythm, right? We're programmed sort of to go to bed, when the sun's start getting tired when the sun goes down, right? And we can obviously get into melatonin release and the blue light exposure. But then the other part of it is like, your body does also start to get ready in the back half of the night, into the morning, cortisol levels rise, right? Glucose levels rise a little bit, right? So, that's all start to get, getting you primed, right? To wake up and hit the day. When you start to eat really late, like what you'll see is normally in a they called midnight, sort of halfway through the night, midnight, that's when your resting heart rate should reach its lowest point. Mm-hmm. Sort of the balance of like that melatonin working its way through its system, right? And your cortisol and everything you getting ready to attack the day rise, right? And when we see that heart rate, lowest resting heart rate, get pushed out later, we start to understand, most likely you may have ate late, unless we see you exercising super late, we'll be like, hey, you might want to try working out earlier. So yeah, with the way we interpret the data, we have lots of users and tags. And so, we're able to learn from that data and give people, personalized recommendations right back in the app.
And it makes so much sense if you think about this. If you're eating a big meal at night, that's going to affect insulin. Insulin's a hormone that then affects cortisol and melatonin. And there's a whole cascade effect of how one hormone affects all of them. So anyways, It makes perfect sense. There's actually a rule in traditional Chinese medicine. They have 2 rules. They said you should not. Well, actually, let me throw out 3 rules. Okay.
Traditional Chinese medicine, a lot, but let's
here we go. Traditional Chinese medicine says you should never go to bed. You shouldn't lay down within 3 hours of your meal. Okay. So you need 3 full hours before you lay down. They also say take 1,000 steps after you eat.
Yeah.
That's another big rule to have. And then the saying is, eat like a king for breakfast, a prince for lunch, and a pauper for dinner. So eat that smallest meal in the night. So anyways, these are all principles that have been around for literally thousands of years in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine and all these others. And so anyways, I love what you guys are doing. One of the things I was so blown away by, Harpreet, is this new, I read this article that came out really recently, and it said, could Oura Ring actually help you fight various viruses? And so my question to you was, tell me about how Oura might be able to help detect cold and flu viruses early.
Yeah. Look, so I think, when COVID, actually, I should take a step back. Ever since we started shipping the ring, beginning of 2016, people, every flu season will get sick. Right. And what we hear from users, we've heard from users for years, they just reach out to us and be like, first they'd say, hey, I think the readiness score is wrong, because it all of a sudden went to crap. My 85 or 90 went to like 50. And then they say, but 2 days later, I found out I was totally feet up on the couch, couldn't move, had the flu. And there's a couple metrics we've seen and always have seen in the readiness score. So changes in temperature, we're basically the only wearable to have temperature sensors on it from day one. So your Apple Watches, your Fitbit, those other devices, haven't put temperature sensors on there, and it's hard to see that on the wrist, but you walk outside, it gets cold. We see that body temperature in your fingers really, really quickly. So we have temperature sensors, we have heart rate and heart rate variability, which can change a lot when you're getting sick. And then also respiratory rate. And, during COVID, given we've seen this pattern for so many years, so clearly in our data with so many users, right? We were actually, when COVID happened, we looked at this as, hey, we got to do our job to help. How can we help? This is a golden opportunity to actually collect great data, right? And form better algorithms to inform people if they may be getting sick before they potentially even feel it. And so we were the first wearable to partner with an academic institution during COVID. So, we worked with UCSF. We then actually did 2 more studies that are still ongoing with West Virginia University and actually also Texas A&M. And the early results from the UCSF paper came out in December. And what they showed was, there was the first 50 cases they analyzed. Now we have several hundred. And so, the algorithms will only get better. But the first 50 cases, what they showed is for 38 people, their data changed significantly in the Oura Ring 3 days before they felt sick, before they reported symptoms. And so, it was actually like that research last year, that we focused on, that frankly, the NBA found out about that. Obviously, they were trying to figure out how to open a pandemic. Other companies, Las Vegas Sands was trying to figure out how to, keep their frontline, casino workers safe, right? But yet still open so they could, survive as a business. And a bunch of other sports leagues and teams, WNBA, Red Bull Racing, Seattle Mariners. There's a whole, a UFC. There's a whole host of other teams as they went to open up. We're like, wow, this technology is amazing. They betted other wearables, and they were like, we should, this is one that we've seen has the best results. So luckily, we've just been sort of, I think, lucky with having some of those metrics and sensors from day one and seeing this pattern over the last few years. And that's how we felt like we had to, invest in it. And now in the app, when you're getting ill, we will give you a message and suggest something called rest mode. So rest mode then says, hey, it looks like you may be getting sick. And some people, when they're taking the vaccine shots, may be getting this too, right? Because you essentially get a microdose, right, of some of the flu. But and that's how your body builds the antibodies and resiliency. But, you'll actually get a prompt for rest mode. Say, hey, are you feeling okay? Like what, you may be getting ill, maybe turn on rest mode. And then we'll ask you sort of like, what do you think? What did you do yesterday? What happened? And frankly, then we start to do things like get rid of the activity score, turn that off, because you should be, you need to rest. And so I think that's some of the stuff that we're able to innovate on quickly, during the pandemic.
It's powerful. And if you're someone like myself or somebody who is more educated on taking care of yourself with natural health remedies, one of the things you can do is when you feel something coming on, you can oftentimes make a bigger difference in terms of lowering your symptoms, lessening your symptoms early on than you can later on. So there's even, again, as we're talking about ancient Chinese medicine, there are certain herbs like echinacea and golden seal are two really good ones to take very early on. Zinc, vitamin D, two other big ones to take more early on in a cycle. Not that they're not good once you have it, but some of these, they give you a lot of the ones that are more adaptogenic in nature and kind of boost your system, like an echinacea, work really great for that. So anyways, it's so powerful. And when you're trying to recover from being sick, sleep is probably the single most important factor in beating a virus, a bacteria, almost anything out there.
Yeah. It's crazy, honestly, what happens at sleep. Like, if you look at some of the things, of course, there's like ghrelin and leptin, right? If you sleep 6 hours or 4 hours, your hunger hormones are going to shoot up. Your leptin, how full you feel after every meal, satiated, goes down. But I think some of the most fascinating ones are like your natural killer T cells that fight cancer are all made in your sleep. Right. And so you look at lack of sleep and, higher incident rates of cancer, and you're like, okay, well, that makes a ton of sense, right? And to your point, your whole immune system, right, is reset, right, replenished. That's how you recharge in your sleep. I mean, if you're trying to work out and gain muscle, all your growth hormone, natural growth hormone, and right, like your muscle repair and recovery, and your muscle memory, if it's a skilled sport or even weightlifting or CrossFit, all of that happens in your sleep. And so I think it's our body is literally this miracle system where we have all these things inside of us naturally that our body does. Of course, you want to boost it with the right, like you were talking about, natural supplements to help the body recover and repair faster and perform better. But it's just amazing. It's sort of like sleep. Matt Walker says this, who's one of our science advisors, and he says sleep is perhaps the most legal, the world's best performance enhancing drug, and it's legal.
Yeah. I mean, you look at some of the top and most successful people in terms of the business world today. I think about people like, and I've spent a lot of time reading. I love reading biographies and reading about people. But if you look at people like Elon Musk, for example, or Warren Buffett, these are people that you would think, oh, they're waking up at 4 a.m. and they're only getting 4 hours of sleep a night. No, they actually make sure they get 8 hours or more of sleep a night, and they go to bed early, and they take their time. I mean, really, to them, they'll talk about the importance of, and I've heard Elon Musk talk about, sleep is so critical for innovative, creative thinking, leading your team, being strategic. I mean, sleep is so important, especially for business execs, or hey, if you're a parent and you're trying to raise champion children, like, hey, you got to be on your best game as well. And I know that's part of the mission statement that you said when you first started is, I mean, you guys are here to help support health and help people be their best in that way. So I love that. One of the other things I think that's so powerful, you mentioned athletic performance, and we know we've got, you have players from the NBA, from the NFL, from the MLB, professional golfers, Olympic athletes. So we've all these people are using Oura Ring now. Talk to me about how Oura can actually support greater fitness levels and another key component, recovery.
Yeah. Look, I mean, sleep and recovery, like we were just talking about, if you look at sort of your athletic performance the next day, right, whether it's, really reaction time, totally 100% influenced by sleep, your muscle memory, ability to like repeat that, exercise you may be practicing or that move in a skilled sport, your ability to recall it. There's even studies, I think there was a study showing that lack of sleep and just, free throw accuracy, how big of an impact that was. But your all your muscle repair, right? All your natural testosterone release, your growth hormone release, all that happens in your sleep. And so if you think about that, and then on the other side, injury, we know that lack of sleep causes, dramatic increases in injury. And so, from getting hurt just lifting weights or going for a run, right, to a sport, sleep literally, I think is why you see so many athletes now. LeBron James saying he sleeps more, than 9 hours a night, right? Tom Brady's been talking about it for years. We see so many other athletes, I think, Chris Paul going really late in the league, and his career, same with Kevin Love, so many of them coming forward and talking about how sleep is something that in Manu Ginobili, he was 40 years old playing in the NBA, right? And obviously, won the title a couple times. And, him just talking about hearing it, like, I wish I knew this when I was 21 and entering the league. Found it as I went, later on, got in my 30s and my late 20s. But it's everything with athletic performance. Honestly, it feels like sleep just makes that so much easier and better.
Yeah, I think about, Tom Brady, it's unbelievable that he is, I think 43 or so, and he's just signed a 4-year deal. And two of the biggest things I've heard him talk about is sleep and bone broth, right? Constantly, he talked about doing bone broth in high doses every single day, getting sleep. So anyways, these things are a big deal. Let me ask, one of the last questions I have for you here about this is, what is the most surprising benefit you've heard people talk about when it comes to Oura Ring?
Look, all the things we talked about, but frankly, I'd say stress. I think, people don't start to realize like how we carry stress, how sort of health decisions that we make or lifestyle choices we make can lead to stress, and being able to see that data and realizing when you sleep better, you just feel better. You're less stressed. You're going to be a better parent. You're going to be a better boss. You're going to be a better coworker. Just that how you handle stress and resiliency. I think all the health things, luckily there's great research on, but I think, we all sort of know when we sleep really well, we feel better the next day, right? Like you have more energy, we're calm, something, bad happens, you know how to handle it. You're less stressed out. I just think that is perhaps, we hear from so many of our users that, wow, I feel better. I feel less stressed.
Well, there's two things with that. One, it's common sense, right? We all know, all of us have had a bad night's sleep. I know I've got a 1-year-old, and my wife and I have had a few, rough nights of sleep, and you wake up in the morning and it's hard to focus. It's hard to think. Again, it's hard versus you get a good night's sleep. You wake up rested, and you wake up and it's like, man, birds are chirping, you're ready to go. So we know common sense. And here's the other big thing. The medical research shows us that as well. 80% of doctors' visits are stress related. Wow. So we're talking about almost every health condition you can imagine is related to sleep versus, hey, you get more sleep, you're fighting it, you're healthier. It's when your body heals, it's when it recharges. Imagine all of us take these cell phones at night and we plug them in and it recharges our batteries. That's sleep for us. And that's why sleep is such a big deal. I want to mention this for everybody listening. We have talked a lot about, sleep and stress and things on this podcast, but I really wanted to highlight this incredible Oura Ring product. And I never do this. The reason I wanted to, though, this is something I personally use. I always like to share on the show. What do I eat for breakfast? What are the supplements I take? Who are the people I'm listening to? And you can see this is on my finger right now. It's on my wife's. It's on our family members, because that's awesome. This is one of those things I have benefited so much from and recommended it now to so many people I've cared for and given health advice to now. So anyways, it has just, greatly improved our sleep and our life. And want to encourage everybody, we made an investment. We just went online and you can purchase an Oura Ring. You just go to Oura, that's spelled Oura Ring, O-U-R-A ring, auraring.com. And I want to say we paid like $299 for it. It wasn't, and for us, it's been one of the best investments we've ever made in our house. So anyways, I just want to encourage everybody, hey, check it out, read about it, know that we use it. And also when you pair it up with the app, you should just go and look at all the things you can check. It's pretty incredible. And Chelsea and I always joke around. Chelsea's like, because we get these reminders now, hey, it's bedtime. It's time to start, or it's time to start winding down. So anyways, we love the app too. It's probably the easiest, most simple app we've ever used in terms of just not being complicated, just giving us practical advice. I want to say you have done an incredible job, you and your team, Harpreet. So thanks so much.
All right, Josh, Dr. Axe, appreciate that a ton. I think frankly, it takes the whole community, right? Like, and all these things go better together, right? You eat better, you move better, you're going to sleep better, right? And so you sleep better, that's going to give you more energy, more recovery to do those other things. You're hormonally going to want to actually eat healthier, right? The next day, you're going to have more energy to work out. So thanks for spreading, the mission and having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Well, again, I'm honored. And again, I love anything that's done with excellence. That's one of the things I think it's a sign of wisdom. And so you and your team have created something that's done with just absolute excellence. It's helping save and transform lives around the world. So appreciate you. And just want to, just say thanks everybody for listening. Go out, check out Oura Ring. And hey, if you have one, hey, go on my social media page on @DrJoshAxe or on Facebook or Instagram or on our YouTube channel here. And I want to know, hey, let us know your your thoughts about sleep. If you've used a fitness tracker, if you use Oura Ring, any benefits you've seen there as well. And then Harpreet, where can people find out more about you or Oura Ring as well?
Our website is perhaps the best place,
Cool.
www.ouraring.com. We actually have a really pretty in-depth blog, where we have users come tell stories. We go through some of the science, some of our validation, some of our partners and, that we worked with. So that's called The Pulse, and you can find it right there on our website. And, we also, send a lot of information via email. So for those who want to, get on the email list and learn more, you can do that too. Myself, I got, I think LinkedIn and, I'm not as popular as you on Instagram yet, but hopefully I can start getting there at some point.
I love it. Well, Harpreet, thanks again. And hey, thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back next week with another show. Remember, keep using food as medicine. Remember as well, as we've been talking about, sleep is medicine, probably the best medicine you can get. Have a great week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed in this podcast are not medical advice and have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. In some cases, individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein.